Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. All right, a lot going on today. Starting off with the DNC kicks off. Actually, it already kicked off a little bit. They already had their little protest interrupting the first one of their little confabs or meetings. And then I have some great guests lined up. But before we get to those, we have Trump that just stepped up to a podium. He's making some quick remarks in Pennsylvania. And hitting the exact same battleground state that Kamala was at over the weekend. So you'll hear from that as well. But I just want you to catch a little bit of this. This is Decision 2024 happening in real time. This is Trump live in Pennsylvania.
Generations, the handiwork of precision custom components has strengthened the spine of America. Your products have gone into the Hoover Dam and atomic energy plants, nuclear submarines, and they currently are doing a lot of work. I'm here today to deliver a simple message. When I'm back in the White House, America's future will be built right here in Pennsylvania. And it will be built by American workers like you. It'll be all over the country we'll be building, but Pennsylvania is always a big factor. And we've had great success, as you know, politically and otherwise in Pennsylvania. And we expect to have it again. We're doing very well here. Thank you very much. With your vote, we will unleash explosive economic growth and vast new prosperity for all of our citizens. We will put more money into your pockets and create millions and millions of new jobs. We're going to do it like nobody else has ever been able to do it. Our plan will massively cut taxes, unlock American energy, slash regulations, big factor, crack down on trade cheaters and stop outsourcing, rebuild our industrial base and bring back those beautiful words, made in the USA. And we were doing that 4 years ago and starting to do really well. And then we had to stop for an unknown reason. Together, we will reclaim our nation's destiny as the number one manufacturing.
All right, keep it rolling. Just pull the volume down a little bit.
We will do it.
So one thing I'm noticing, you can't see, he's doing the thing where he turns his head 45 degrees to the right, 45 degrees to the left. He's speaking very monotone. He's on teleprompters here. He's staying on script. You can almost tell when he gets off script without even seeing the video. He looks straight ahead, so it's real obvious for us watching the video. But he's not doing that very much. So I don't expect this to last very long. And on the podium in front of him, it says Trump Vance, text Pennsylvania to 88022. And other than that, this seems like pretty well buckled up. He doesn't have J.D. Vance behind him. I guess he's off doing his own thing. So that's going. That's what's the setting is now. Let's listen to about another minute in this. Then we'll get to my guest.
Some facts that are interesting. The year before I took office, the United States lost over 10,000 manufacturing jobs. Everybody said you'd never bring it back. But under my leadership, we created more than 500,000 manufacturing jobs in less than 3 years. After decades of wage stagnation and income surged, we had a surge like nobody's ever seen before. But it surged for everybody during the Trump administration. Every group, everybody, men, women. We had every household was at a level that they've never really experienced before. The typical American household saw their incomes grow by more than $4,200 per year. Everyone was better off when you had a gentleman named President Donald J. Trump at the helm. Does anybody know him? Whoever he may be. I kept every single promise I made to the workers of Pennsylvania and to every other place within our country.
That'll do for now. That's Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Now, this is one of the key states. This is a state that both Trump needs and Harris needs. And that makes the math almost a sure shot, considering how many states are just so locked up. There's really only like 7 states that are toss-ups out of 50. And so right now, when you look at the real clear politics average of who's winning in Pennsylvania, it's Trump. He's up. But the tally is as close as it could possibly be. 0.1 point. He's not even up 1%. Now, there's a couple of outlier polls. Quinnipiac and the New York Times have Kamala up at by 3 and 4. And then there's one Trump poll that is from Bloomberg that has him up by 4. And then the rest of them are just 1 or 2s right there in the middle. There's a whole list of them. So that is the tightest state, most consequential state. And you don't think of Pennsylvania as being a big juggernaut state, but it has 19 electoral votes. It has the most electoral votes of any of the swing states. You can even count in, Michigan has 15, Georgia has 16, North Carolina 16. If you can maybe swing Virginia back red, there's 13. That's great, but Pennsylvania's still bigger than all of them. Well, I mean, Wisconsin sounds big, but it's only 10. So Pennsylvania is a big prize, and both of them spending a lot of time there over the week, and I expect that to continue. I mean, obviously after the conventions happen in Chicago. But coming up next, we'll talk to my first guest, Ashley Smith Thomas. She's a political strategist, and we're going to do a little preview of the Democrat National Convention, which starts today. And my question for you, I'm going to ask you after I ask this of Ashley, do you have any concern the Democrats can rally support here? They can get it together and possibly win in November? I think I may be hearing too much confidence from Team Red, from Team Trump. What do you think? Do you think that they can pull this together and this could be the start of a Kamala Harris presidency? Why or why not? 800-288-9227. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Donald Trump continues to speak in Pennsylvania, and that battleground state is hotly contested. It is just on the wire, as close as it could statistically be. Meanwhile, just a few states over to the west, the Democrats have started their national convention. My next guest, back on the James Show for, the 100th time now, Ashley Thomas from Freedom's Fund USA. My question for you, Ashley, and for the people listening is, look, do you think this convention can rally the voters and Kamala actually win in November? And I get the feeling that a lot of people are getting really confident and maybe more confident than they should be.
Well, first, thank you for having me. And that is such a great question. I think that the Trump campaign should not underestimate Kamala Harris and Walz. Because when you look at what is going on here with the Democratic National Convention beginning this week, it ends on Thursday. She's utilizing former President Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, you've got Jimmy Carter's grandson, you've got Hillary Clinton, some of these big names to come out and rally behind her and show an attempt to show unity within the Democrat Party. The thing about the DNC is that they're going to be using a lot of hype, a lot of emotion. They're going to try to tap into people's emotions, get them inspired as to why they should vote for Kamala because of the thrill and the excitement of a potential first female president here in the United States. Meanwhile, you look at the Trump campaign, and if he can just stick on policy and policy alone, that is going to be the strength and the path forward, in my opinion, to be able to defeat Kamala. Because when you look at her policies and what she's trying to bring forth now, it is actually going to cost the American taxpayers even more money. You look out on Friday when she revealed her opportunity plan, she was trying to reveal her economic policy, should she be president. And with that, it's going to cost the American taxpayers about $2 trillion added to our debt. And she wants to put a cap spending on corporations in order to curb inflation, which we've seen throughout history that doesn't work. But rather, that's actually going to drive the prices even higher. It's going to impact the consumer even more, and it's also going to reduce the supply. So she also wants to add a $25,000 credit for people to be able to use that as a down payment for first-time home buyers. And then the question becomes, okay, well, where does that money come from? Well, that money comes from us taxpayers. And so you look at that and you see that she does not have a reality of what true economy and how do we boost America's economy going forward. So I think if the Trump campaign can really focus on policy, that's going to be their strength suit. But I would encourage them to not underestimate the hype and the emotions that the DNC is really playing on, trying to get the American voter to support Kamala Harris.
Ashley, I feel like people give these swing voters way too much credit. Like, I can talk bad about them because they're not listening right now. Like, if you don't know who you're supporting or who you're voting for at this point, you're a mouth breather. You're not paying attention. You have no idea what's going on. So I have a hard time believing like the policy nuance of price controls is even going to get through their thick little skulls. I mean, these are people who are like, can I still have my abortion? Okay, voting Team Blue. And it doesn't go any deeper than that.
No, and that's such a great point. And if you look at what's going on at the DNC, I mean, the fact that Planned Parenthood has their mobile centers where they're giving free abortions. I mean, the whole point here that we're seeing is this hardcore abortion push in women's rights, in which Kamala is trying to tap into that voter base as well, trying to pull women and women voters her direction. Even some of those independents that are riding the fence, she's trying to pull them to her direction. I think if she would have had a better VP pick, in my opinion, compared to Walz, someone that was more of a moderate, someone who's more bipartisan, then she could probably get those riding on the fence to fall into her camp. But when you look at Walz and how he's governed Minnesota, he's so radical and he's incredibly progressive that it's not resonating with a lot of the Democrats. My concern is, though, is that she's trying to really pull in and use the emotions, making it look like she's really in with Hollywood, and using the influence of social media and the elitists, the very ones that they talk about that they're not going to align with. Well, she does. And so I think that is where we're going to see a lot of that poll here at the DNC, is trying to make it look like, give the illusion that she's as popular as she is. But with that, though, that's very appealing to your younger voters, particularly when you look at some of these polls, that when you have Trump going up against Biden, a lot of your millennials and your Gen Z voters were starting to fall into the Trump camp. But the moment that she launched her candidacy, the polls indicate now that she is at 60% among Gen Z voters compared to Trump being at 40%. And that was according to a Newsweek poll last week. And so some of the issues that has been appealing and that has been of concern to them have been more of your social cultural issues, which Democrats capitalize on, and they're very good at tapping into those social issues. Some Gen Zers feel like the economy is at its worst and they're concerned about their future. And so then that they're able to fall into the Trump camp. But it's going to be really telling to just see what is going to be conveyed this week. I would encourage people, whether you're Republican or Democrat, to watch the DNC, because I believe that we're going to see a lot of these policy positions to some degree being unveiled. And then you also look at what's going on outside the United Center in Chicago. They're expecting over 100,000 anti-Israel protesters to show up this week and force a ceasefire, as they want Gaza to be set free. And so they're applying a lot of pressure on the current administration. So again, it's going to be telling to see what happens this week.
What about these 10% of people who say they're going to vote third party? Because, you know, every election you have a Libertarian and a Green Party candidate thrown out there, but now you also have RFK, and if Robert Kennedy gets any sort of percentage, that could be the difference in the election.
Absolutely. So you see some of these independents who just feel like that they cannot vote for Kamala, and they just feel like they cannot vote for Trump. So they're putting their support behind RFK. But when you look at some of these polls, though, there hasn't really been a stark increase in his percentage. One of the last polls I saw showed that he was like at 7%. Some polls show that he's at like 10%. Still, I don't think that's going to be enough to sway whether it's Kamala Harris or Trump winning the nomination in November. I still think that people are going to show up and vote when it comes to November, but I just don't think that RFK is really going to have that much of a pull when it comes to some of these voters. And so that's why I think for Trump, if he wants to win in November, again, and I feel like I keep beating this drum, but it's about policy, policy, policy. How are you going to make sure that America is better moving forward? Yes, you delivered on your 4 years when you were president. Okay, what's new? How are you going to make sure that America is prosperous, and what new that you're going to offer? I think the more that Harris tries to deliver policy, the more she blunders. And so I think, again, it's going to be telling to just see what happens here at the DNC as we start to hear more of what her platform is going to be. But I mean, we're less than 90 days out from early voting starting in October, and then the election in November. And so I just don't think that RFK Jr. is going to have a whole lot of push and pull when it comes to what happens on Election Day.
All right. Thank you. Ashley, tell them how they can find your work outside of the James Show.
Yes. So you can visit my website at freedomsfundusa.org. That is freedomsfundusa.org. And I am constantly on Instagram and Facebook, and you can find me at Ashley Smith Thomas.
Well, you're constantly on Instagram and Facebook, but it's for work reasons, right? Because that's what I have to tell my kids, too. It's just
Absolutely.
like, no, I'm not just goofing around like y'all do. This is for work. I have a very serious job that requires Facebook and Instagram. All right, the election is in 78 days. We have the Democrat National Convention kicking off today. Do you have any concern the Democrats can rally support and win in November? That's the question. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, a majority of Texans approve of Bible stories being taught in public schools. What do you think? That's on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Homeowners, listen up. You need to get that roof inspected. The roof having a problem means other things are going to have a problem if you don't get it fixed. You know, it's one of those gateway problems. So it's recommended that you get it inspected once a year, and to make it as cheap and efficient and hassle-free, because that's the big one, hassle-free as possible. All you do is you call Paradigm Roofing, you get it the time set up, they come out, 23-point inspection. How much does it cost? Oh, it's free. And if they find anything, they'll go over any problems, let you know what an estimate is, decide if you want to go forward. You make the decision. You could even call someone else if you want to. But the benefit is, if you do need a whole new roof, you get $500 off just for mentioning The James Show. And the big benefit, this annual maintenance allows you to get the maximum lifespan out of your roof in this brutal Texas climate, literally the hottest day of the year. And I've gotten to know the owner of Paradigm, Greg Hiltz, over the past few months. This is the type of guy you want to do business with. His cell number is going to be on the bottom of your contract. So if you have any problems, any performance issues, or any questions, call the owner. So call Paradigm Roofs today, 972-542-7774. Do not play Google roulette with your house. Go to ParadigmRoofs.com or 972-542-7774. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. So the DNC kicks off today, and they already had protests. Like, they had protests before the DNC even started. And, we make fun of the protesters for being, lazy, unemployed, living in their mom's basement, just a bunch of stinky hippies and using some crystal instead of deodorant or whatever. But it speaks to how some of them can be a little more industrious than others. And I'm just, I'm trying to delineate here, because there is sort of like the flower power hippie wearing fringe, lefty protester. And then there's the guys that all dress alike and they wear a mask and they break windows and stuff. And hippies aren't breaking windows and setting stuff on fire, so this is the other side of that weird demographic. And that, give them credit, though. They got started early. They were protesting yesterday. Like, the convention starts today. They were protesting yesterday.
One of the first challenges for law enforcement is this protest that's going to be going on. We can see that countdown on our screen going on just less than 24 hours to the start of the Democratic National Convention. All eyes right now on the city of Chicago. It's
like, dang, y'all are just unhappy people. And I don't get this. Why do they protest their own like that? Let's ask Anthony Russo back on the James Show from the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. How come you have lefties protesting lefties? And I know that this is a pattern. They did this in 1968 when the Democrat National Convention was in Chicago, same town. That's when Bill Ayers did the Days of Rage. What's up with that? Do you have an explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I feel a little triggered. I do use organic deodorant, so I'm not a hippie. I just like to use good stuff. So I want to put that on the table first. Okay, back to the actual protesters. What's going on out there? First off, it's worse than what we're seeing in the media. I have friends in the Chicago Police Department. They're prepping for something much more severe than this. So this is what I would call a glitch in the matrix, the media matrix, because they don't know how to exactly say what's going on out there.
Well, hang on. Give yourself credit. I didn't pull that from MSNBC or CNN or the ABC national news feed. That was from the ABC local affiliate in Chicago, Channel 7. Oh, no, you're right. I've had a TV on MSNBC all day. They showed none of it. Neither did Fox News, to their discredit.
Yeah, no, I've been watching Fox as well, and I'm like, this is shocking. Like, guys, this is a big deal. And when they do the little blips of it's a few thousand people, the police in that city are prepping for six figures, over 100,000 protesters, some of which might be the friendly hippies. But I think that they're planning for much more. They've elicited police departments all the way through Wisconsin and Michigan. Like, this is a legit situation, and they don't know how to report it because they don't have any enemies in that group. It is the left against the
right.
left. So why are they cannibalizing themselves? I honestly don't get it, because they weren't there for the Republican convention that is probably more pro-Israel than this current administration, or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's a very interesting thing to watch, and the fact that it's not being covered shows you that if something really does pop off, if something really does get serious, they're not going to know what to do.
I can't wait to watch them report it. Now, how come when store owners in major metropolitan areas, they have to put up plywood and OSB over their store windows? How come they never have to do it for right-wingers?
Because first off, you can say what you said earlier, we have jobs, one. And two, we actually care about the rule of law until it gets too far. And somehow we haven't been pushed too far yet. I think we might have seen something different. Say Donald Trump did get assassinated. But I think at this point, we haven't been pushed far enough, and it's probably a good thing. But you're watching the frustration on that side, especially the pro-Palestinian movement. And it's a glitch that I don't think is meant to happen for them, because when it comes to the destruction that they could cause, especially in a city like Chicago, it's just very odd to me, and it doesn't support the actual people. The fact that Illinois is not a swing state is always kind of weird to me, because it is getting close to middle America. Yeah, you've got the big city that is Chicago, but nobody's happy with anything going on there, but they just vote the same way over and over and over again. And then, like 1968, you're having a very contentious DNC, and could end up becoming dangerous for people around it.
Well, let's give them a little bit of credit here. The polls have done well since Kamala announced. The polls have done well since Walz announced. It's reasonable to expect another bump in the polls after the DNC. So they may have some really good timing here on delaying actually picking their candidate. Not that they were going to let anybody vote on it, but it seems like the timing is working out really well. Almost planned.
Almost. Yeah, no, it's 100%, because they've managed to be able to have Kamala Harris not have to have primary time, which primary time is where you alienate independent voters.
It would have killed her.
Too far left.
It killed her last time, and I'm not just saying that to be mean. It killed her last time.
Killed her. She never even got off the starting line. Because she's just not she's not competent enough to be a actual formidable Democrat nominee. So the timing was perfect. What I will say, because you brought up polls, and I'm going to sound like a wackadoo crazy conspiracy theorist here, but I as much as people say I don't really trust the polls, I don't trust the polls at all right now. To me, this is a setup for believing whatever we see on November 6th, because any anecdotal social media poll, even from leftists, is showing a 20 to 30 point swing for Donald Trump, yet the polls are about even. To me, when you look at 400,000 people on a Twitter poll or a Facebook or a TikTok, and those 400,000 people are blatantly saying Donald Trump, and then you look at a poll that takes about 1,800 people, it's strategic, and it's showing it split, I have trouble believing that, because I don't believe the media anymore.
I think they have a chance of winning in November. I wouldn't be so dismissive.
Now, do I think they have a chance of winning? Absolutely. Will I believe it? I'm going to sound like that jerk and say that I don't know if I could believe it at this point, but the momentum is favoring Kamala. So you've got multiple things. You've got the media holding her water and making her seem like the greatest candidate since sliced bread. And then at the same token, they're setting it up where no matter what, people are going to have to believe what they see, because these polls are oddly close. There's so many things going against Trump. So I'm with you. I think that Trump could actually lose. The question is, will I firmly believe it?
Anthony, what's on the last episode of the Truth Will Set You Free podcast?
Well, this week, I'm assuming we're going to be talking a lot about the DNC, and that's every Tuesday night, Truth Tuesdays. That's what we're talking about. Last week, I think we had a discussion with the leftists. Was that? No, we had somebody come on, Emily Mangione, a friend of ours that has traveled the world as a Trumper, and kind of gave us what she's been to like 30 countries recently, and gave us what every country, Russia, China, Japan, all these countries actually feel about the about the United States of America, and even Trump.
That sounds interesting. All right, Anthony Russo, the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. Thanks for being on the James Show, sir.
Take it easy.
Yeah, so I'll give you some more details on how, where, when to consume the Democrat National Convention, should you choose to do so, coming up next on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Check out this. Here's your number of the day. The election is coming up. 78 days. I know. The election's in 78 days, so we have the Democrat National Convention kicking off today. It already kicked off. They've already had their first protest yesterday, and at their first, whatever they're doing on stage, their first little event today, it was protested. Now, leading the charge at yesterday's protest in the city of Chicago outside the Democrat National Convention seems to be the Free Palestine movement. Now, the Free Palestine movement, I don't want to call it like the cause du jour, but there seems to be a pattern of these protests, and the cause seems to be interchangeable. I made the comparison with our last guest about how the Democrat National Convention that happened also in Chicago, same city, in 1968 had similar protests, and they kind of got out of hand. It was called the Days of Rage. That was like the first big hurrah of Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, if you remember them from the whole Obama stuff. But now they're doing it again. However, this isn't about the Vietnam War, because that was sort of the main predicate driving the Days of Rage in 1968. There's always a cause. If they want to go camp out and occupy Wall Street, there's a cause. If they want to camp out and to free Palestine, there's always a cause. It's almost like these guys are guaranteed to protest at some point. They just need a cause to fill in the Mad Lib on their activism sheet. So, look, you can just hear this for a second. One thing you need to know is the lady that goes up on stage, and you can barely hear her. There's another guy on the other side of the stage, and she gets up on one of the side microphones and starts yelling, "Free Palestine." She's wearing a mask. She's wearing a mask in 2024 after the Cochrane study already came out, and everyone agrees you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Even Fauci doesn't wear a mask anymore. This lady was wearing a mask. That's the one thing you missed from the audio, but here it is. This was this morning.
Y'all can do better than that. Mike, the money! 150,000 people are dead! You are funding a genocide! The Harris-Biden administration keeps spending money to Israel!
So there is sort of a schism on Team Blue these days because of the Free Palestine folks. And if that's going to be the driving cause of the protest, that seems bizarre because the Democrats and the Republicans sort of share the same view on Israel, generally speaking. And I mean uppercase R, uppercase D. Now, your regular Democrat voter, Democrat in the street, or Democrats that were protesting last night in Chicago in the street, they're not as pro-Israel as your average Republican. But when you talk about the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers and, dare I say, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, there's almost indistinguishable on Israel policy, aside from a few nuances here and there. And they didn't get the same sort of protests at their convention that was just held, in Milwaukee last month. If you want to watch the Democrat National Convention, it kicks off tonight. They're going to start streaming live video out of there at 6 o'clock our time every day of the convention. It's just now through Thursday. They want you to go to dimconvention.com, but you can go to a ton of other platforms. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on X, formerly known as Twitter. I know all you cool kids that are on TikTok, you could watch it there if you want to be educated on politics by TikTok. Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. I think a bunch of us are going to be watching it on Prime Video. I got to tell you, though, when I flip around in not just previous election cycles, but including this one of my favorite sources that I end up landing on, especially during these live events, whether it's a rally or a press conference or something like that, is C-SPAN, c-span.org. It's amazing because I have a life, you have a life. We have jobs, we have families. We have obligations. We got to pick someone up from soccer practice or take grandma to the hospital or something like that. And so if you miss a lot, C-SPAN does a really good job of just cutting it out and putting the whole thing up with no dressing on it, with no opinions, with no fancy graphics. It's just plop. There it is. So if you want like a dry, sterile source, C-SPAN's really good for that. That's not what most people want, though. Most people like a little sauce with their chips. Tonight, President Biden, Jill Biden, and Hillary Clinton are headlining. I don't know. Is that odd to put the sitting president on the first day? I don't know. I don't read anything into that. I just see other people reading into that. I'm like, why? Why are you inventing stuff to talk about here. There's plenty of legit stuff to talk about. Governor Tim Walz is going to speak on Wednesday night. And now there he will formally accept the Democrat Party's vice presidential nomination. And Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be the top speech on the top night. She's the headliner Thursday. She will now formally accept the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. A few other people you might recognize speaking at the DNC. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is on that short list to be VP. Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Why? Dude, I have no idea. Do we do that? Like when Trump was president, did Mike Pence's wife speak at the RNC? I'm not saying that to be rhetorical. Like, I don't know. I don't remember that. That's just, y'all don't have anyone bigger you'd like to promote? Like, you don't see, this is usually the spot where you take your top guys on the bench. You know, you take your sixth man and you give him a little bit of shine. And it's worked before in the past. Barack Obama came to prominence by being one of these second level speakers at a Democrat National Convention. And he did the old, I don't believe in the red states of America. I don't believe in the blue states of America. I believe in the United States of America. And that was kind of what propelled him into the discussion. Like, hey, what about this guy? Well, maybe we should run him for president in 2008. I don't see a whole lot of that. If you go look down the list, there's Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and then former First Lady Michelle Obama. Coming up next on The James Show, we're going to play Dead or Alive for 2 tickets to the I Love the 90s tour. Vanilla Ice, Rob Bass, All for One, a few other people there. But I want to ask you about this Biden impeachment. As soon as we get done with that, there's been some movement out of the House committee where they're recommending impeachment. And okay, Biden's obviously taking bribes and stuff, and he probably should have been impeached a long time ago. But really, at this point, shouldn't we just let him finish the last 5 months and not even go through this? Do you think Biden should be impeached? 800-288-9227 and Dead or Alive coming up in the next segment. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to the big show. So already today, the Democrat National Convention has begun. At the same time, some committees in the House of Representatives have recommended impeachment articles on Joe Biden. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, just it's the next step in that process. So a lot going on the election front to talk about. But Talmadge Boston, my next guest, you've probably read some of his columns in the Dallas Morning News over the years. I think the Democrats have a real chance to just keep this wave going. They got a nice little bump when Biden stepped down and Kamala stepped up. They got a nice little bump for Tim Walz. I think they might get a nice little bump here. Can they ride this wave to victory?
I sure think it's possible. The possible bump was this convention with the protests that were supposed to be organized by the pro-Palestinian anti-Israel group. And they're there. Original estimates might be over 100,000. Turns out there's like 20,000. There's 12,000 Chicago policemen, as well as National Guard and Secret Service and FBI. So there's about as many policemen as there are protesters, and thus far there have been no real incidents. It looks like Chicago did properly prepare for this and blocked off roads and designated areas for protesting and so forth. The pro-Palestinians said they were going to protest today and Thursday. But as far as today goes, no real incidents. And so it's going to be you hear the term coronation of Kamala as their official nominee, and Walz is the running mate, and everybody's going to be acting like they like each other. Tonight's Biden speech, both Joe Biden and Jill Biden are speaking. Of course, they're both totally ticked off by having been dumped by the Democratic leaders. I think it's interesting that they are leaving after the speech and will not stay around for the rest of the convention, which I think speaks volumes. But everybody's going to pretend like they all like each other and they're together, and we'll see when Kamala finally gives a press conference. And, of course, the first debate may end up being the only debate, will be on September the 10th, so that should be something of a test. But her honeymoon phase appears to still be going on, and without any major protest disruption, should certainly continue through the convention.
So why do you think there may only be one debate?
Well, of course, they've got to agree on a network and a schedule. And after the first one, if something goes horribly bad for one of the two candidates, they may be fearful of having a second debate. So until something gets scheduled, you can't count on anything. There is going to be a vice presidential debate on October the 4th, which should be interesting. But since both of these vice presidential candidates are mere rubber stamps for the presidential nominees, don't expect anything significantly different to be said by the vice presidents on October 1st compared to what the presidential nominees say on September the 10th.
Yeah, you pointed that out last time you were on, how it's so odd for both of these candidates to pick an ideological clone as a running mate.
Yeah, that was my column in yesterday's Dallas Morning News, that both parties had a chance to broaden their base and choose a more moderate candidate to provide some balance and attract some of the still 15% of American voters say that they're undecided and independent, and many of those are in the most important swing states, and yet nothing was done to choose a vice president that would appeal to an undecided independent voter. So it's a strange political choice, but nonetheless, that's a choice they made, and they'll get to play it out and see how it goes.
So don't these protesters, these Free Palestine protesters, realize that they're kind of hurting their own cause by making this convention look ugly?
I don't think these types of protesters are necessarily rational. I think they're obviously very passionate. They feel very strongly about their positions. And if there's no real disruption, then they won't necessarily look that bad, as opposed to if they were trying to loot businesses and get thrown in jail and those types of things. They would obviously look bad if those kinds of things were happening. But thus far, it seems like everything I read, that they've been well behaved, and police is conducting the effort to keep things under control. So far, so good. And so it's a story that I thought would happen and potentially mirror the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, where there was so much, strife and billy clubs and
the days of rage, right?
Those days are not happening today, and whether they'll happen on Thursday. But of course, Vietnam was such a totally different situation. I mean, America was totally divided over what course to take. What we have today is a war in which no American soldiers are involved. It's halfway around the world. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of Jewish Americans. There's a lot of pro-Palestinian Americans, but nonetheless, a significant minority of the American population, as opposed to the Vietnam protests, which basically involved almost every American on one side or the other.
So if you had to put $5 on the election, who would you bet on winning, Trump or Harris?
Right now, based on the polls that I've seen, I think Harris has the edge, but she has not been tested. How she does in the debate, whether she gives press conferences, could obviously change that rapidly, but it is extremely close. I mean, the polls every single day, there's variations. And, of course, the only thing that matters is the swing states. You asked me which one would I bet on. Mm-hmm. With all of the momentum that Harris has, with Trump's thus far sticking to really dumb talking points like her race and criticizing the Republican governor of Georgia who's endorsed Trump for being insufficiently loyal, for continuing to talk about the election being stolen in 2020. These are all issues that are counterproductive. There's a great case to be made against Harris as Biden's vice president. Her new economic plan is absurd. The Washington Post, which is obviously very liberal, said it doesn't make any sense and it's a gimmick, and no serious economist could back it. The New York Times' Maureen Dowd yesterday had nothing good to say about Biden's legacy. So there's a case to be made if you stick to the issues and what's been done and what the proposed plan is, as opposed to name calling and choosing silly battles over what race Kamala Harris is.
All right, you can check out some of his work, talmadgeboston.com, or if you're already on the Dallas Morning News, he's got an article that came out, 4 days ago. Harrison Trump should have learned from history. See a bunch of his other work there. Thank you, Talmadge, for being on the James Show again. Appreciate it, sir.
You bet.
All right. Hey, your thoughts on anything Talmadge Boston and I just talked about, 800-288-9227. I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on any of those topics that were brought up. And coming up next, Kamala Harris did stop and talk to the press pool that was waiting by her campaign bus. She gave him 3 minutes. I'm not going to play the whole 3 minutes, but I'm going to play a couple things out of there to let you know where her head's at, because it kind of answers why maybe they shouldn't be putting her out to answer questions on a regular basis. That's coming up in about 5 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.